G'day guys, you're back with Miracle Max. Today in the workshop we have an Isuzu D-Max 2017 model with a 3-litre engine in it. What's wrong with it? It's running like an absolute pig. Now he's taken it to another mechanic somewhere. He spent over $800 on it and got absolutely no difference out of it whatsoever. It's still running absolutely shocking. So what's wrong with it? I don't know. Let's check it out together. Full disclosure here, I've already had a look at this vehicle previously and didn't have enough time to diagnose it correctly. He only had a short amount of time before he had to head back home. So he's brought it back in today so that I can spend some time on it and diagnose it correctly. Firstly, I want to confirm the customer's complaint. The other day I did take it for a road test and it was running like an absolute pig. But I want to show you how rough it's running even sitting here in the workshop. Now you don't have to be a trained mechanic to see that, hell, that ain't right. So yeah, that's what we've got to diagnose, guys. That fella there is not happy. Let's hook up the scan tool and check it out for starters. But before we dig in deep, we need to have a look at the simple things first. Is the motor mechanically okay? Of course, with the diesel, it's a little bit harder to get in and do a compression test through the glow plugs, etc. But I've got a secret up my sleeve. It's called a relative compression test. What is a relative compression test? What we're going to do is look at the starter motor draw, whether it's voltage or current, because every time the piston comes up to the top, it has to fight against compression. The starter motor has to work harder and harder, and then as it goes over the other side, the power stroke, it's a lot easier for the starter motor to turn over. So we're going to see all these different humps up and down like this. Hard, easy, like that. We can have a look at either voltage or current. Perhaps we might even do both. So my setup is channel 1 has my current clamp on it over here, and channel 2 has a battery voltage connection straight across there. Let's have a look at the oscilloscope and see what happens when I crank the engine. Of course, we have to stop the engine from starting. In this case, I've opted to disconnect the injectors themselves. It seemed to be the easiest option at this point. Okay, let's have a look at that waveform. So as we can see, there's a high current peak at the start of it. That's quite normal. And as the speed starts to equalize, you can see that these go into certain troughs, I guess you could say. So the voltage does the opposite. The voltage drop comes down here, as you can see, and then the current goes up. So they're opposite to one another. We have a voltage drop at this particular point, but the current goes up as it's trying to fight the compression of the engine. So what we need to do is bring down some rulers and have a look at that, and let's just see if there's anything that really stands out at us. That voltage certainly looks okay there. Let's have a look at the current draw across the board. If we were to count them off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, not in any special order at this particular point, but I'm looking for any anomalies. And I can't see any. Let's go down to the bottom of them, the troughs there, and they certainly look okay as well, don't they? I can't really see that there is any issue with the motor. Keep in mind that this is a relative compression test. It's just comparing one cylinder to the next, but surely that should give us a nice even pattern, as well as the engine should be comparatively even in its running. What I want to do next is go for a long road test to get this up to temperature. It's been near the workshop overnight, and I now want to get it up to temperature to do some comparisons to some other data that I have. Look, I've done nothing more than taken it for a road test, and you saw how crazy rough it was running before the road test. Let's just see if that's made any difference whatsoever. That might point to a fuel issue, temperature issue, injector issue, the list goes on. Let's just start it up. Well, that doesn't really seem to have improved the situation, does it? We need to investigate further. I've got a few fault codes listed here. Injector, I said a P2146, a P2149, a P0638. So that's to do with injector voltage circuit not present. You know, they're not a current fault. And the throttle actuator performance. Just keep in mind that what I did do was disconnect the injectors. when I was doing that cranking test or relative compression test. So whether that brought them on or not. This ECM information invalid error, that's not present either. That's the only ones that I've got there. I'll have a look and see if there's any freeze frame data. We'll just go for that one there. 100% load engine speed, 190 engine speed. That's a bit weird. I don't think anyone was doing 190 kilometres. Engine run time was only 3 minutes there. And throttle position was 100%. And that's pretty weird. I certainly didn't do that. It was 90 kilometres since it was cleared last. What else have we got there? Cruise control was off, everything was off. Fuel filter was okay. That doesn't seem to be battery voltage. Man, that's low, isn't it? 9.9 volts. Ignition voltage was only 10. That's certainly a bit strange, isn't it, that we've got such a low voltage there. I might want to check that later on. I won't get rid of that actually. I might hang on to that fella there. Let's have a look at the second one there and see if that comes up with the same sort of fault there. I'll just have a look at those voltages because that's kind of weird. It's probably going to be the same. Voltage, 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 where are we? What I did do since last time this vehicle's been in, I've had a 2018, the next year on of the D-Max. And what I did was I downloaded all the data that I could possibly find off that vehicle. So I've got some good data to compare it with. And now I've now put that on the TAT site so that everyone can share from it as well. So I'm going to compare this lot with the live data that I have on here and just see how that compares. One thing I did want to check was our rail pressures and make sure that they're similar. I'll give it a rev and see what happens, hey. I'm happy that rail pressure is working correctly, even under load. The desired and the actual were mimicking one another, so that's good. So I'm going to do a cylinder balance test here. Idle speed's a little bit high, isn't it? So I can't do that. I'd like to do a cylinder balance test according to the scan tool, but unfortunately the idle's too high and it won't do it. Maybe the ECU is trying to compensate for the rough idle. Maybe that's the issue. But I just want to disconnect the injectors now, and it's probably going to stall out. But I'm going to start with number 4. Have a look at how rough the engine is running now, and I'll let you know when I disconnect the injector. Okay, number 4, disconnected now. Any difference? I don't think so. If I disconnect number 3, it kills it straight away, doesn't it? Okay, that's number 1 disconnected. Yep, big difference. And I can't actually get to number 2 right now, but number 4 makes no difference. See, that's off. Back on again, no difference. What we're doing next is having a look at the injector waveform. Now I'm on number 4 there, as you can see with my low current clamp, that guy over there. And we'll have a look at the waveform as we start it up and see if that is similar to the waveform that we were meant to have. I believe this is a Delphi injector system, so that should compare to the injector waveform that's provided with the picoscope. As you can see, this is the pattern that we should have, or something similar to it. We've got it on our 20 amp scale over here, as you can see. Let's start the engine and see how ours compares to that, keeping in mind that this will be during a broad range of rev range, so just don't take that section as gospel. Okay, let's start her up, see what we get. This is number 4, keep in mind. Change our time base, and then we'll go through the rev range and see how that compares. So each one of these current draws on the solenoid is a squirt. So we might have a pre-injection, a main injection, a post-injection, and I can't think of the other name on that one. But that does give you an indication that it is actually working. Perhaps our trigger is a bit on the dodgy side. Not sure where my trigger's gone. But that looks okay as far as I can tell. So we should be okay with that. I'm going to compare it with another injector just to see how it looks, but I feel that that is okay. I've now got my current clamp on the number 1 injector just to compare. Number 1 was running fine, number 4 not so much. So let's have a look at the oscilloscope and see how number 1 compares to number 4. So as you can see, even though it's changing, we've got identical waveforms, so we know that the ECU drivers, etc., are all okay. So I don't have any trouble with that. All good. Guys, I've also just carried out a smoke test of the inlet system, and I can't see any problems there. I don't believe that there's an inlet manifold leak anywhere. There's probably more leaking out of my paint tin than there is out of the inlet manifold. So yeah, I can't see any issues there whatsoever, guys. So that's another test completed. Last time the customer was here, I did an injector leak back test. That's where you pull the hoses off the injectors that go back to either the tank or the filter. And the extra fluid or the extra diesel is designed to go through the injector, not into the cylinder, but through the injector for cooling as well as lubrication purposes. In this particular case, you can see, look, it's not too bad. There's no really high spot. Don't worry about this little bump, that's the glass itself. The fluid's down there at that level. And you can see they're fairly even across the board. This one might be a fraction higher than the others, or it might be an optical illusion. Either way, if number 4 was a problem, we'd expect the fluid to be way up here or basically empty. Look, I'm happy that we're getting the correct amount of leak back for all of those injectors together. The next test I want to do is a cylinder balance test. Now this is also known as an injector feedback test. This is a little bit different to a normal cylinder balance test, but I couldn't do it before because the idle was too high. The ECU was trying to compensate, but I think I've snuck one through on it, and hopefully I can show you guys. So let's go to cylinder balance here. It needs to be with the engine running, so we'll start the engine. Hopefully we get there in time. Cylinder 1. And we can see we've got -3 and +3, but this is on cylinder 2 and cylinder 4. Very unusual. Let's go stop. And I think you can go straight through to cylinder 2. We'll have a look at that one. And it gives you basically the same sort of readings. But I'm concerned about number 3 and number 3 over here. -3 and +3. Very unusual. Cylinder 3 will give us the same sort of information. Once again, number 2 and number 4. Cylinder number 4 up here, and -3 and +3. Now usually they're in a buddy system, which would mean cylinder 1 and cylinder 4 would compensate for one another. So you'd expect like a +3 and a -3 down here, and number 2 and number 3 would do the same sort of compensation. But in this case, unless this engine is different to a lot of other engines, it's strange to have number 2 and number 4 as a buddy system. They're compensating for one another. Now I did manage to pull all the injector connectors off, and number 4 is the only one that's not contributing. All the others, I can see a vast drop in the RPM, but number 4 doesn't do anything whatsoever. So still looking. Look, I've spent quite a bit of time talking to the guys from TAT, the automotive technician, and we've all sort of agreed that it seems to be an injector issue. Now 200,000 Ks on the clock, and if we just chuck in one injector, well, yeah, we really haven't accomplished much there. I will suggest to the customer for all 4 of them, but there's one last test I'd like to do, and that's to pull out number 4 injector over there and switch it over with number 1 injector, which is about there somewhere. And while it's out, I can probably get my inspection camera and have a look down the hole, see if there's any wetness in the walls on the cylinder, and also just to see if there's carbon build-up, you know, things like that. So that's my goal. I'm going to try and switch these guys over front to rear, and then if the fault follows, then of course we know that it's an injector fault. So that would be a definitive answer. That's probably the only way that I can be guaranteed that that is an injector fault. Okay, I've got the rocker cover off, and I've checked number 4 mechanically. I've checked the camshaft. I've turned it over 1 full revolution on the camshaft, that is. That's 2 on the crankshaft, just to check the actual condition of the cam, and I'm happy that it's okay. Valve clearances aren't that flash, but they're close enough to within spec. If they were that far out, there would be a major issue. I'm going to pull the injectors out now. As you can see, I've numbered them 1 through to 4 as we go back. Easy way to get these out. I'm just going to switch number 1 and 4, of course. This one right there, number 1 with number 4. The pipes that you undo are the guys on the side there, of course. It's not that hard to undo. But one thing you must do if you want to just pull the injector pipes back is undo these clamps. So on the side there you can see there's one clamp down here that holds these 2 injector pipes, and then going over that side, I don't know how good you can see it or not, it's in there anyway. So there's another clamp that holds the other 2 injector pipes. So once you loosen those, then you can pull your injector pipe back this way and get your injector out. Just a bit of a heads up of getting number 1 injector out. It wasn't that easy, but this the bracket itself has to come up with the injector. You can't get the bracket up separate because it's being held in by the cam bracket over here. So if you lift your injector up, and all I did was push this pipe back, we had those clamps off, you push it back that way, and then you can wiggle the injector backwards and forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, and then eventually it'll pop up with the bracket attached. So when you put it back in, make sure you put the bracket on the injector before you actually fit it in place. So now that's number 1 out, number 4 is next. Okay, so here's a bit of a trick for young players, trying to get this injector out, and I couldn't because it was hitting up against the camshaft. You can see that the camshaft is round, and this thread here was hitting against the round section. But they've been pretty smart, Mr. Isuzu. They've actually cut a flat onto it. Can you see that flat there? Once you rotate the camshaft around, via the crankshaft of course, a flat comes up, and then simply out she comes. Don't know how much you're going to see on this, but I'm going to give you a third-hand view of how I've cleaned up the bore, the injector bore that is. Now let's go down there with my boroscope, and as you can see, it's not fantastic. I'm doing it just for testing purposes at this moment, switching number 4 to number 1. Number 4 is a little more dodgy. I'm having trouble trying to clean that, so I'm not sure that the seat is actually fantastic either. Okay, off camera, I've been a very busy boy. Remember how I said I was going to change number 1 over to number 4, like that? And I've done that. Okay, so I put everything back together. It's just sitting there flopping around in the breeze. That's not the important thing. Remember when I disconnected number 4 over there, it didn't make any difference to the running of the engine. When I disconnected number 1, then the engine died down, which indicated that of course number 1 was doing okay, number 4 was not so much. So let's start it up and see if I've made any difference or not. I'm going to disconnect number 1. And keep in mind, this is number 4 injector. So if I just remove that, that should die away if it's any good. And I've got nothing, okay? If I go to number 4, like the old one, that didn't make a difference before, and now it does. Okay, so yes, we've got faulty injectors. Some people out there might have said, come on Max, it's done over 200,000 kilometres, of course the injectors have had it. But it could have been several other things. I wanted to confirm my diagnosis that number 4 injector, for some reason, even though the leak back amount is okay, it's even with the rest of them, maybe there's a spray pattern or some other issue, but I have proven that number 4 injector is faulty. So I'll just tell the customer, we just need to replace 1 injector, correct? No, no, no. Don't ever do that with these common rail injectors. Do the whole lot, guys. 4 injectors must be done. Okay, time to ring the customer with the good news. Whoa! I wish I'd thought of it before I changed the injectors, but I should have used my thermal camera. Of course, if a cylinder is missing, it won't produce as much heat. Let's have a look at number 4 now. Let's go way back there. There's only a tiny bit that I can get into, but let's just see if I can get the temperature. So those back blocks are quite hot. 70 degrees there now. Let's come down to the centre block. 72 degrees on that centre block. And that front block, it just doesn't want to measure. It's only in the 30 range, 40 range, something along those lines. So yes, even using my thermal camera has double confirmed my diagnosis. We have at least 1 crook injector In this case it was number 4, we've switched it to number 1. So number 1 is faulty at the moment. It's been a week now since I made the diagnosis, contacted the customer and told him the bad news. He's gone ahead and purchased the items necessary himself, including a full set of Denso injectors, injector sealing washers, and injector clamp hold down bolts. One thing to note, to get the injector number, it's written just here, you have to pull out the injector itself to find the number written on the stem there. This is really important to make sure that you get the correct injectors for the vehicle. So according to this, a little over $3,000 later, and I'm ready to stick them into the vehicle. Removal of the injectors is exactly the same as what I've already shown you. I've pulled out that front one for testing purposes to get that number off it. I've still got those other ones to get out, of course. Undo that bolt, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Make sure you undo your pipe over this side, and then it should hopefully come out, as long as it's not gummed up with carbon. This one doesn't seem too bad, so I'm focusing on the fact that hopefully it's just injectors. Just keep in mind too, before you fit the new injectors, we need to get this code off the top of the injector connector here. Now it's a lot easier while it's out of the car to get that code, so write it down, take a photo, whatever you want to do, and label them 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when we do the injector coding, it's a lot easier. The reason we do this, of course, is apart from being in the instructions themselves, it says if it's not properly registered, as in using the ID code, rough idling, abnormal noise and other symptoms may occur. We don't want that to happen. We want the customer to be happy with the work completed, so we need to register the ID code of each individual injector. Now that I've removed all my injectors, I've cleaned up all those bores where the injectors sit, and I've made sure that all those seats are absolutely schmickoid. They're as good as I can possibly get them. So time to install the new injectors. I've taken a photo of all the codes on the injectors as I mentioned before, and I've numbered those injectors. Of course, don't forget to put on that sealing washer. That guy needs to go on before you stick it down into the bore. Make sure that that stays on and does not fall out. Once the injectors are in place, it's time to button them up. And as you can see over here, injector clamp 26 Newton meters. So we need to lubricate the brand new bolts that we're just about to fit. Okay, just a quick recap. I have installed the injectors 1, 2, 3, 4. I've put the clamps on together with the new bolts 1, 2, 3, 4. I've torqued the bolts, and I've also installed the pipes over here, the unions, and I have tightened them accordingly. So all clean, ready for the rocker cover to go on. I've given the rocker cover a very quick clean. I've installed new seals in each for the injectors to go on, and of course a new rocker cover gasket. Rocker cover is now back in place. All the accessories are now in place, so it's time to code the injectors. I'm now using the Autel and I'm in the special functions area. Notice here, program injector ID. Of course, remember all those photos that I took of those codes before? That's where we're going to put this information in. So let's hook into it. So this is the original number here, and you can see that I've got a new number to install in number 1 injector. So we need to do that. So we need to erase all that. All I have to do is stick in that code into that line for number 1. Then it's simply rinse and repeat for the rest. So that there should be equivalent to that fella up there. Okay, I've double checked that code and made sure that it's exactly the same as that. All I have to do is go onto my 2nd, 3rd and 4th. I've now entered all the new codes, and hopefully when we hit OK, it should be recoded. Okay, we turn the key off, turn the on key and press the OK button. Hit the OK button as instructed, and we are, hey presto, we now have the injectors coded. Well, the more important thing is, will it start and will it run even and smooth? Hopefully we've got that sorted. Don't know about you guys, but that certainly looks a lot smoother to me. Hey, let's give it a rev. And just to prove that it's running evenly now, 100 degrees in the centre block. Be 100 degrees there, which it is. And that back one, let's go to that back one. That was a little bit harder to 97, 98, 99, 100 degrees, all 4 at 100 degrees. So all cylinders have an equal output. Road test complete, no check engine light, no fault codes, no oil leaks. I reckon the customer's going to be pretty damn happy. It certainly sounds a hell of a lot better than it did originally. I'm glad that I was able to prove it diagnostically that number 4 injector was indeed the fault. Mechanically the engine was okay, but I definitely wanted to make sure that it was the injector, so switching number 1 and number 4 proved my diagnosis. Hey, if you got something from this video today and you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, feel free to comment down below. Of course, don't forget about that notification bell. You don't want to miss any future videos. Of course, you can catch up with us on Instagram as well as Facebook. So guys, until next time, this is Miracle Mac signing off. I will catch you later.